President-elect Donald Trump is amplifying his push for U.S. control of the Panama Canal and the Danish territory of Greenland. And he also talked about Canada wanting to annex it. When it comes to Greenland and Panama, it sounds like he's not ruling out military force.
Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
I can't assure you. You're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this. We need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military. I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something.
And when it comes to Canada, he said he was open to economic force. So this was all during this news conference just a short time ago, where Trump spoke to reporters about this wide range of issues, including his idea of making Canada a U.S. state and renaming the Gulf of Mexico. And he outlined parts of his economic plan and ticked through a list of grievances while railing against the legal cases against him. I want to bring in Jeff Zeleny, who is live for us now in West Palm Beach, Florida, right near Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. You know, I think as a reporter listening to this, Jeff, it certainly stood out to me that Donald Trump would not rule out military force to take control of the Panama Canal and Greenland. But also when it comes to Canada, you know, he had sort of what we thought was seemingly joking before, trying to belittle Justin Trudeau, saying Canada is the 51st state. But he seemed pretty serious in wanting to annex it and make it part of the U.S.
He's definitely serious about that, Pamela. Certainly a long list of headlines mixed in with some familiar grievances and greatest hits as well. But you mentioned renaming the Gulf of Mexico. He proposed renaming it to the Gulf of America. On another specific issue on the pardoning of January 6th, the defendants, he did not rule out pardoning violent defenders. He had a long list of grievances against what the Biden administration is doing on executive orders. But it was Greenland, something that the president-elect has been talking about repeatedly, initially sounding like bluster. He made clear he's very serious about that for national security concerns.
We need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran. I mean, people have been talking about it for a long time. You have approximately 45,000 people there. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. That's for the free world. I'm talking about protecting the free world.
So perhaps it's no surprise that Donald Trump, of course, the real estate magnate, would want to expand U.S. territory. Much more complicated than that, of course. It's a Danish territory, and it's not for the U.S. to have. That does not necessarily mean that he could not build an argument for that, as well as send a message to other world leaders that Donald Trump is on the verge of being back. Of course, his first term in office, Pamela, as you well remember, we covered his first presidency. He made a hallmark out of trying to keep other foreign leaders off balance, if you will. And on that vein, he talked about NATO, talking about once again, demanding and urging fellow NATO members to contribute more of their GDP. He also said if the hostages are not out in Gaza by the time he takes office, he said all hell will break out. So certainly a variety of headlines there in the first news conference of the year from the president-elect. But Pamela, the question is, as he comes back, his legislative agenda at the very end, he said he, does not necessarily have a preference over one bill or variety of bills for his agenda. That is the central question. How does he enact all of these policies into action? But there is no doubt he has a lot on his mind just 13 days before taking office.
President-elect Donald Trump is renewing his threats to take control of both Greenland and the Panama Canal, and he's refusing to rule out using military force. Listen to Trump at a news conference earlier today.
Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No, I can't assure you. You're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this. We need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military.
You will not use military.
I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something. Look, the Panama Canal is vital to our country.
I want to bring in our chief national security analyst, Jim Sciutto. Jim, what are you hearing from your sources after this dramatic statement from the president-elect?
Listen, there was a tendency in Trump's first administration to dismiss comments like this from Trump as bluster, and many of them turned out to be. This time around, I think it would be unwise to do that. And when I speak to people close in Trump's circle, and I ask them, is he serious about the Panama Canal? Is he serious about Greenland? And how far is he willing to go? They say he is quite serious, and that he frames it, and you hear it from his advisors as well. They frame this as a national security issue in Panama. They allege Chinese control there. In Greenland, they talk about the importance of it to the Arctic and elsewhere. They describe it in national security terms, necessitating hard action, which might begin with economic pressure, to say to Panama and Denmark, a treaty ally of the United States, as a fellow member of NATO.
Greenland is part of Denmark.
Greenland is a territory of Denmark with its own elected leaders.
And Denmark is a NATO ally.
It's a NATO ally, fought alongside the U.S. in Afghanistan on hard frontline duty and lost many dozens of soldiers there. But that it may begin with economic pressure, Trump saying, if you don't give me what I want, I will impose serious backbreaking sanctions on you, Panama, or on you, Denmark. And if that doesn't work, you heard the president-elect there say himself that he might very well order military action. When I ask folks inside Trump's world whether that is serious, they say, not right now, but they're not taking it off the table. So I think it's important not to dismiss this, to take it quite seriously. And the other point I'll make, Wolf, is this, that when I ask folks in that world what his vision is, they describe it as a kind of Trump-Monroe doctrine. We got to go back to our high school history here, but the Monroe doctrine was in effect that the U.S. rules in the Western Hemisphere. And that's where the Panama Canal is. That's where Greenland is. That's where Canada is. And that he's going to push, flex his muscle here, and that he's not going to tolerate any interference or any limitations on that. And to your point, this would involve pressuring treaty allies of the United States, either economically or militarily, to give the U.S. what it wants. That's an enormous break with decades of bipartisan tradition.
Enormous indeed. All right, Jim Sciutto, thank you very much. I want to bring in Trump's former defense secretary, Mark Esper. Mark, thanks very much for joining us. You previously told me you thought Trump's rhetoric about Greenland was a negotiating tactic. But hearing him now, do you take this more seriously than when he floated this idea originally back in 2018?
Well, I do think we should take his words seriously, the words of all leaders seriously. He's just continues to add more detail to it and flex his muscle, as Jim just said, even more. What's surprising of all the issues that the new administration is going to face in the next 2 weeks when they come in, that these would be out there being discussed for the last couple of weeks, let alone on the list at all. I mean, we're looking at a hot war in Europe with Russia invading Ukraine. Everybody's waiting to see what the Trump administration approach will be there. We have ongoing conflict in the Middle East. There's a curiosity, again, how much Trump will support Israel, and maybe more importantly in that region, how we will deal with Iran, which may be pursuing a nuclear weapon. And then you have the broader issue of China's ongoing approach trying to take the United States down in different areas. I think, frankly, that's the common thread that ties together both Greenland and Panama that we need to pay attention to. But again, Panama and Greenland wouldn't hit my top 10, probably wouldn't hit my top 100 right now in terms of challenges we need to take on.
You served, as I mentioned, as Trump's defense secretary. How would you have reacted if he told you he wanted to invade Greenland, which is part of Denmark, a NATO ally, or the Panama Canal?
Yeah, surprised, of course. I mean, as was stated, Greenland, which is part of Denmark, is a longtime NATO ally. We have a very good relationship with Denmark. We actually have a U.S. military bases on Greenland at a Space Force base and a defense missile warning radar, what we used to call Thule Air Base. So we don't have any problems in terms of access or working with the folks in Greenland or Denmark. And of course, same type of relationship in Panama. That said, I think there is some credibility to be given to Trump's concerns about the Chinese in Panama. It's certainly grown over the years. You know, in 2017, Panama changed its recognition from Taiwan to China. They joined the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative in 2018. Investments in ports and bridges and rail lines increased dramatically. They own 2 of the 5 port zone concessions in Panama. So I think we should be concerned about continued growth and engagement in China, I wouldn't consider military force, but I think certainly engaging them diplomatic and economically to make sure we can push the Chinese out of Panama is something that's very important, should be considered. I might say though, Wolf, when you look at concerns about shipping and economic security, and I think again that's legitimate. If we go back to the broader landscape that's happening out there in the world, Panama represents 5% of global traffic in terms of trade. The Houthis, which have cut off or reduced traffic in the Red Sea for global shipping, is at 12 to 15%. And more concerning, I think, which entails the broader focus against China, is the South China Sea, where 20 to 30% of global shipping passes through there, and yet we have standoffs happening in the in the Second Thomas Shoal and the Spratly Islands and other places. So again, it's a big world. Chinese influence is all over there, and I think we need to step back and take a look at the bigger issue of the Chinese strategy to usurp the United States.
Trump also made some rather noteworthy comments about Mexico earlier today, as well at that news conference. Watch and listen to this.
We're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which has a beautiful ring that covers a lot of territory. The Gulf of America, what a beautiful name.
So is this a serious proposal from the president-elect? Why do you think he's even floating this idea?
If it comes from the president of the United States, you have to take it seriously. We have a lot of issues on the table between the United States and Mexico. I think Mexico is now our largest trading partner. That's number one. Actually, it'd probably be number two. Number one is immigration, and we're going to need to work with them very closely to cut off illegal immigration and to seal up that southern border coming from there. And that's going to take work with the Mexican government. And then, of course, the fentanyl that's killing, 67, 80,000 Americans a year, Wolf, coming up through the South, through the border. We need to work on those big issues. And I don't think we need to necessarily antagonize the Mexicans if they're even concerned about renaming the Gulf of Mexico. Again, not a top 100 issue for me as this new administration takes office on January 20th.
Former Defense Secretary Mark Esper, thanks as usual for joining us.
Thanks, Wolf.
And coming up, the makeover at Meta, a big policy reversal today, making Donald Trump happy while the CEO admits the change will bring, and I'm quoting now, more is open to using the U.S. military to potentially seize the Panama Canal and Greenland as well, which is part of Denmark. Sources close to Trump say he's very serious about this. What's your reaction to that?
Well, this is typical bluster from the president-elect. This obsession with Greenland and Panama really came out of nowhere and has been filled with mistruths and misunderstandings. I don't understand why this president is so committed at a time of global instability, of fostering more instability globally, of undermining our allies, and at the same time, diverting the attention of our federal government toward issues like invading Greenland or Panama, while we should be focused on bringing down costs facing workers, retirees, and families here in this country. That's what our focus should be on. If this president's serious about an America First agenda, he should be focused on domestic economic issues, not some weird obsession with invading Greenland or Panama.
Speaker Johnson, the House Speaker, is looking to put Trump's legislative priorities in one large bill. How do you think Democrats should approach this?
Well, what's clear is that the Trump tax bill from 2017 was really just an effort to line the pocket of the wealthy by giving table scraps to working people to distract from the fact that they were really just slashing taxes for wealthy individuals and corporations. And their attempt here to double down on that is exactly why Democrats will oppose this new Trump tax bill. Look, we want to make permanent the tax cuts for the middle class, but we shouldn't be exploding the deficit and utilizing those small tax cuts for working people to really line the pockets of Donald Trump's billionaire friends who now populate his administration. And so we have to be crystal clear about what they're trying to do. Give us a tax bill that keeps the tax cuts on for working people, we'll support that. But put forward a bill that gives table scraps to working people while really exploding the deficit and focusing in on cutting taxes for wealthy individuals and paying for that by cutting programs like Social Security and Medicare. We will do everything we can to stand in the way of that type of dangerous proposal.
before I let you go, I know you faced some attacks, some personal attacks, as the first openly transgender member of Congress, including on which restroom you're allowed to use up on Capitol Hill. You've said you're more focusing in on the issues facing your constituents. But how do you plan on working on legislation with various Republicans like Nancy Mace, for example, who personally attacked you?
Look, there are professional provocateurs parading as public officials in the Republican conference, but those are individuals who won't work with any Democrat at this point and can barely work with their own Republican colleagues. I'm used to working with people who disagree with me on some pretty fundamental issues, including issues that are near and dear to my heart personally. But that's the only way we make government work. It's the only way we have a pluralistic, diverse democracy. We have to be willing to have conversations across disagreement and, yes, seek to find common ground with people who we may disagree with on every other issue but the one before us. That's what I did in the Delaware State Senate, where nearly every bill I introduced and passed with bipartisan support, and it's how I'll continue to approach this work in Congress.
Once again, congratulations, Congresswoman, on your election, being sworn in the House of Representatives. Congresswoman Sarah McBride, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And coming up, our CNN team is on the scene of...
And good evening, I'm Erin Burnett. Out front tonight, we begin with the breaking news. Trump's national security advisor doubling down on a military threat to Greenland tonight. Here is Trump's incoming national security advisor, Congressman Michael Waltz.
Greenland is key to our national security, and the Arctic is important for our national security.
So you agree with
and the
Trump?
president knows that.
Thank
I think he just said all options are on the table.
All options are on the table. Congressman Waltz's comment there is coming after Trump explicitly said this about Greenland and the Panama Canal today.
Your references to Greenland and
Yeah.
the Panama Canal, so forth. Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No.
And can you elaborate again? You didn't rule out military coercion
Well, we need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran. I mean, people have been talking about it for a long time.
Well, Trump has been publicly talking about Greenland for 5 years. It wasn't a joke. And today, in a matter of minutes, President-elect Trump spoke about 3 land grabs: Canada, Greenland, and the Panama Canal.
Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like, and it would also be much better for national security. Don't forget, we basically protect Canada.
Now, just to make the distinction here between Canada as opposed to Greenland and Panama today, Trump did say explicitly that he would not use military force to try to take over Canada, which he, of course, has repeatedly called a 51st state. But Trump's threats have already destabilized Canada's current government. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is resigning on the heels of Trump's tariff and economic threats. Tonight, responding to all this, tweeting there isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become part of the United States. Of course, he's already lost his job over this. The Danish prime minister making it crystal clear tonight that Greenland is not for sale. Of course, it is territory of Denmark, saying just moments ago, Greenland belongs to the people of Greenland, all 56,000 of them. The Danish king also shocked historians by stepping up, getting involved in this, and changing the royal coat of arms in Denmark. They literally have come out in all of this and changed the coat of arms to more prominently feature Greenland. The updated version features an enlarged polar bear, which represents the world's largest island. All of this is a desperate scramble to respond to Trump, who today dispatched his son, Don Jr., and several MAGA loyalists to Greenland. The group posed for pictures in the Capitol, stopping by a restaurant, passing out MAGA hats. And while there, Trump himself called his son, talking to people there, with the locals, telling them, quote, "I just want to say that it's a very special place. It needs security for itself, but it also needs security very much for the world. You see the people and the ships sailing around, they're not the right ships." Okay, so what people and ships sailing around is he talking about? Specifically, he is talking about ships sailing off the coast of Greenland, which belong to Russia and China, 2 countries that just agreed to work together to develop Arctic shipping routes. And they have been conducting military exercises around that island. Putin, in fact, now has more Arctic military bases in the region than NATO. His base is in the map in red. Now, the U.S. does have one major base already in Greenland. And as Congressman Waltz makes clear, Trump is not idly engaging in a stand-up routine with these threats. In fact, none other than Harry Truman actually tried to purchase the world's biggest island. That was back then. Now, Trump is about way more than just one place. He is talking about redrawing the entire map, even so far as to do this.
We're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America.
It's like the Persian Gulf, the Arabian Gulf. Jeff Zeleny is out front live in West Palm Beach, Florida. And Jeff, you listen to all these things and it all adds up to this is really happening. Trump is making it extremely clear that he is extremely serious about the United States acquiring Greenland and possibly more.
Aaron, there is no question President-elect Donald Trump is serious about talking about American expansionism. It has really become clear through a crescendo since his election, through social media responses. But today at that news conference in Mar-a-Lago, he made clear repeatedly in question after question and answer after answer, this is something he is intent on doing. And for the first time, really cloaking it in a national security argument. As you said, this is not something we have heard the why necessarily until right now. Now, he did often sound like the real estate magnate he's been his entire life. Of course, now he's president-elect. In 13 days, he will be the 47th president of the United States. So anything he says moves markets, concerns allies, and beyond. Now, the question, is he talking about this as a negotiating tactic? Is he trying to rattle allies? But one thing is vastly different from the beginning of his first term nearly 8 years ago, which we, of course, followed along with. There was an isolationist strain in his voice, an American first agenda, if you will. That is not what we're hearing now. He clearly is making a case on Greenland, on Canada, and the Panama Canal specifically. And using the death of Jimmy Carter, who, of course, one of his biggest accomplishments was ratifying that Panama Canal treaty back in 1977. Also saying that is part of the economic security interests of the U.S. We will see how this plays out. There are many things he talked about at his news conference, many things he is pushing on day one. But, Aaron, one thing is a bit uncertain. How would any of this happen? Speaker Mike Johnson telling reporters today in the Capitol he's not been part of any of these discussions at all. So never mind U.S. law. All of these things would also violate international law. So the bluster versus the reality, a bit unclear. But there is no doubt about it at all. Donald Trump is serious about Greenland, Canada, and the Panama Canal. Aaron?
Yeah, absolutely. And in the sense, as just already seen the disruption in the Canadian government. Whatever strategy it is, there are already serious repercussions. Jeff Zeleny, thank you very much, was there with the president-elect today. And that really raises this crucial question here. You're talking about redrawing the entire map of at least the Western Hemisphere as Trump envisions it, and complete change in the arc of history. Is there any real chance that Trump could actually find a deal to get the world's largest island, Greenland? Fred Pleitgen is out front.
With a Donald Trump Terminator action figure on the cockpit dashboard,
This looks like the runway Santa Claus would land at.
Trump Force One on final approach to nuke Greenland. Don Jr. claiming it's all just a private visit.
Just here as tourists, seeing it, looks like an incredible place. We've been talking about going for a while. I was actually supposed to be here last spring for some of the stuff I do in my free time, but just really excited to be here.
But Don Jr.'s trip comes right as his dad, the president-elect, has reiterated he wants Greenland to become a U.S. territory. I'm hearing that the people of Greenland are MAGA, Trump said in a post on his platform Truth Social, and we will protect it and cherish it from a very vicious outside world, make Greenland great again. It's not the only expansionist talk from the president-elect. Trump also on Truth Social recently insinuating he wants the U.S. to swallow Canada as well. Many people in Canada love being the 51st state, he said. The United States can no longer suffer the massive trade deficits and subsidies that Canada needs to stay afloat. Justin Trudeau knew this and resigned. Greenland is important to the U.S., about halfway between North America and Europe. The U.S. already has important military assets, including a Space Force base with a missile defense radar base there. And China has been trying to get its hands on some of the potentially vast mineral deposits the autonomous island, which is part of Denmark, holds.
We need Greenland for national security. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. That's for the free world. I'm talking about protecting the free world.
But that's where the president-elect's big ideas seem to meet a different reality. Both Greenland and Denmark say this piece of the Arctic can't be bought.
We have a clear interest in that it is the United States that plays a large role in the area, and not, for example, Russia or other countries. But Greenland is for the Greenlandic people.
The Danish Prime Minister remaining diplomatic there. At the same time, she was seemingly addressing President-elect Trump when she urged everyone to respect the Greenlandic people and that in the end, they would be the ones defining their future. Aaron?
All right, Fred, thank you very much. And out front now, Aya Chemnitz. She is a Greenlandic member of the Danish Parliament. And Ms. Chemnitz, I appreciate your time tonight. You heard President-elect Trump today refuse to rule out the use of military force for the U.S. to acquire Greenland. Do you take that threat seriously?
No, actually I don't. And I think it's been, of course, a wild day, but also a crazy day. And I have been in contact with all kinds of media from all over the world. So, of course, everybody is interested in hearing what is Greenland's position. And Greenland is not for sale. Greenland will never be for sale. And therefore, I think it's important to be more respectful when it comes to a collaboration with a near ally.
There's video today of President-elect Trump's son, Don Jr., arriving in Greenland today. And they've got a crowd of people waiting for him to arrive or cheering him on. Some of them are wearing MAGA hats. Don Jr. then posted a photo from Greenland of even more people wearing MAGA hats behind the American flag. And he posted, along with that, Ms. Chemnitz, quote, Greenland loves America and Trump. And last night, as Don Jr. was on his way to Greenland, President-elect Trump posted saying, I am hearing that the people of Greenland are MAGA. Now, obviously, they're going to post pictures of people who support them. But when you look at those images, when you think about what you know, is it possible that there are people in Greenland who truly do support Trump and support what he wants?
Of course, and I think you can find that in all countries, but I don't think it's part of the majority. I think it's a very small minority. And most of the people on the picture are people that I know. But I also know that with the free lunch that was given to people standing outside, just dragging people in from the street, more or less, giving them a MAGA hat and then just taking pictures. Of course, it's the talk of the town. Of course, it's nice that there's an interest in Greenland, but that's not the same that Greenland wants to be American and we want to be American citizens. Greenland is not mega. Greenland is not going to be mega. And I think in many ways it's a Trump stunt. It's what he's done many times before. Yeah. But I think the majority in Greenland, they find it quite scary, actually, and quite uncomfortable that there's so much focus on Greenland and that U.S. is actually in a disrespectful way, showing that they would like to be buying Greenland or controlling Greenland. That is not what the population in Greenland wants.
Elon Musk has also been pushing this entire idea, as you're, of course, aware. And Musk is extremely influential with President-elect Trump, to state the obvious, to understate the situation. And Musk said, Ms. Chemnitz, that the people of Greenland should decide their future, and I think they want to be part of America. I know you think that not only is this disrespectful, but that this is some sort of a stunt and may go away. But of course, it has come back. I mean, is there any chance that there ever is some sort of a vote or a referendum or anything of that nature?
There will be an election in Greenland, which is an ordinary election for the parliament back home in Greenland and for the government of Greenland. And it will be in a couple of months, so it will be before April. And in many ways, that will be the most important referendum or election in newer Greenlandic times. So, of course, this is going to be very interesting. I don't have that many concerns. I have some concerns whether people are just scared of what is happening. We're seeing that some people are even talking about moving away from Greenland if that is going to happen. So I think this is not something that is going to happen. I think there might be a referendum about whether we should have independence or not, but I think it should be based on facts. It should be based on what kind of agreements can we have? So I think in many ways, we won't necessarily see a change when it comes to the realm. We'll see a change when it comes to a closer collaboration between Greenland and US. When it comes to business development and even defense, I would say, is an area that we could maybe collaborate a little bit more on. So I think extracting rare earth would be interesting for us. Having more tourism, which is, it's quite interesting actually. The Trump Jr. is there because he might attract more American tourists to Greenland. But otherwise, Greenland is not for sale and Greenland will never be for sale. So Greenland is not mega and Greenland is not going to be mega.